there were several targeted attacks that supposedly took out about 45 of their top leadership in Iran. To what end? What is the end goal when we know that there'll be quote unquote enough winning?
We are against this war, but we are not for their regime. Noem was fired by the Trump admin. That's what we need to do. Just keep making him look stupid with all of his cabinet members, and we'll take them out one by one.
She's done. Goodbye.
Yeah. Washed up, as they say.
If you keep this up, you're gonna not only lose the midterms, but you're gonna lose Gen Z for a generation.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Washed Up. This is episode 44. I'm Abby, and this is Colin. Today is March 10th, and we have a lot to report on.
We're here commenting on the weekly news, so you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents are. And that's especially important this week because we just got into a war with Iran, and all of the legacy media has been championing this for the most part. This is a war that's very much being driven by boomers and Fox News. And also, the US has kind of been acting on behalf of Israel in all of this because this is more clearly in their interest rather than ours, as we'll surely get into. We got into this war on the 28th of February, and it's been, about 10 days since then, so there's a lot of news to cover, but we are here to get into it.
Yeah, when the strikes first happened, Colin and I texted each other on the next day, or that day, on February 28th, like he said. The Israeli striked on Tehran, and Donald Trump was saying that it is going to be a massive and ongoing war, as we're coming to the rescue. That was something that he had been saying since January, and then on social media encouraged Iranians to go in the street and celebrate.
Yeah, so the announcement that Trump made on the night of 28th, they launched this war in the middle of the night, which is very bizarre to wake up to the news. We had seen it coming for a while, and on this show we had been saying over and over again, like, war with Iran is coming, war with Iran is coming, and it finally happened in the dead of night. And the announcement that Trump made was pretty bizarre. He was wearing like this white cap, and everyone's comparing it to from Shrek, Lord Farquaad, who had this quote where he said, "Some of you may die, but that's a risk that I'm willing to take, or that's a price I'm willing to pay."
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make. Let the tournament begin!
And that's basically the tone and tenor that I got out of watching Trump's announcement that we had launched that war.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of confusion about, I think, the death toll for one, how many have been injured. Colin and I have been comparing notes about that as well. One of the more prominent deaths that happened was their Ayatollah, who was killed. The Ayatollah is kind of the religious leader there. And so for them, it seems like they're interpreting this as a religious war. And for us, I mean, we're going to get into like why the US has stricken on them and what is going on in that part. That happened nearly the next day, I'm pretty sure. And actually, when that happened, I was watching an FBI versus Secret Service hockey game to which Kash Patel was playing in. So I'm pretty sure that I knew about this death and updates with the war before he even knew about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Khamenei was killed early on in the battle, the fight, and there were several targeted attacks that supposedly took out about 45 of their top leadership in Iran. At this point, the U.S. has struck around 4,000 targets in Iran, mostly their military. We've wiped out their entire navy, allegedly. And 7 U.S. service members have been killed as of today that we know of, 150 injured. And it's like Abby was saying, the members of the administrations don't seem to be taking this very seriously. As she said, she was at the hockey game, and we probably knew about the death of the Ayatollah before the FBI director did, which is absolutely ludicrous. There's no world in which he should be out there playing literal games while the
Hmm.
rest of us are at home trying to keep up with this as it's breaking. And, we have essentially no control over the situation. He has some small modicum of control over it. And just the flagrant disrespect with how the rationale has completely changed over and over again for why we're in this war It's so insulting to the American people, and we're the ones paying for all of this.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good point to make as well. Like, he's literally the director of the FBI and he's playing games, like you said. I think it's also really important for us to note, too, like, we are against this war, but we are not for their regime at all. I think that's important to mention before we continue to get into this. Um, I think that this war is impacting all sides in a negative way. We at Washed Up have always been against intervention, US intervention, and don't think it's ever worked out. And like you said, like we've been talking about it for so long, this episode seems like it was a looming thing that we had to prepare for almost since Trump got into office, basically.
Totally, totally. And I want to underscore what you just said that we don't support the Iranian regime at all. They're completely oppressive. They've been terrible to their people. You know, they've killed hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters just within the past couple of months. They run their country tyrannically. They've sponsored terrorism abroad in the Middle East against our allies, against us. They've supported Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Israel for decades. And as Trump mentioned in his announcement of this war, we've been enemies with them for decades. The infamous Iranian hostage situation in the 70s, when they had their revolution, took our diplomats hostage. Like, we are not friends of Iran. But as you just said, we are also not a fan of getting involved in entanglements that could go on and on and on, killing our own citizens and leading to all this expense. They're spending $1 billion a day so far since the
Yeah,
war launched.
which
And
is our money. I think that's another reason why I think everyone needs to care about this so much is because it really does impact every single person, not in a good way. Um, it feels really unserious too when Trump is going out there talking about it like it's some game that he's winning. I think that this rhetoric of winning, winning has been pretty prominent recently. On Monday, he was talking about winning the war. He said, we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough, which I thought was really interesting. I'm like, when is enough? How long will this last? Hegseth this morning also said that today would be the most intense day of strikes in Iran. There's just so much to keep up with, and these people in power are treating it as if it's not human lives at stake.
totally. And a huge question that we need to keep at the forefront of our minds in talking about this is to what end? What is the end goal when we know that there'll be quote unquote enough winning? It seems like there's so many reasons why they claimed they drag us into this without ever identifying any specific reason that would have justified or necessitated the US launching this entire war. To their credit, yes, they took out a terrible leader in Iran with the Ayatollah. They disabled their navy, which is a huge accomplishment. And we commend the troops who are, doing this work. But it just seems like we've kind of, in addition to not having a solid, clear rationale for going into this, there's now huge questions about how long this is going to drag on and to what end. This could go on for months, if not years. I saw some um, intelligence sources suggesting that at least through September is what they're estimating. But again, as we've seen in past regime change wars like Iraq, where they declared mission accomplished very early, we were then there for around 8 years. So this is just the kind of thing that we need to keep in mind is Trump does have a good track record of getting in and out really quick, like with Venezuela. However, Iran is a very different country strategically. They have a population of 92 million people, which is not like Venezuela, and they also are very entrenched in their defenses because they've been expecting this war for a really long time also. And their people culturally are just different, where they are more likely to dig in their heels as opposed to giving in. And if they see that they're being completely bullied by, or they view that we're launching a religious war against them, then they're not going to take that lying down. So,
And so many Americans have already spoken out and said things about how they're afraid of terrorist attacks in retaliation back, which is horrible to say, but I don't think it would be very surprising if that did happen. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how Trump was saying that there's like not really anyone ranting or running this country anymore. He went on a little bit of a rant about it, which I don't think is necessarily true. Like they still have their president, and yes, they took out the Ayatollah, but his son is now in that position, which I didn't do too much research about him. I just saw that he is also pretty authoritarian, kind of on the same.
I heard that he's actually worse in terms of being oppressive and also wanting nuclear weapons for their country. And if the goal here was to deter them from getting nuclear weapons, well, they sure as hell aren't going to want to give that up now that we've attacked them.
Mhm.
Whatever government they cobble together after this is going to want to defend themselves all the more and have all the more urgency to go after getting nukes. Which, again, we had said before when we attacked Iran last year that we were doing it to wipe out their nuclear capacity. Well, not only did we not apparently do that effectively, which they told us we had obliterated their nuclear capacity, but then also now they're going to want to get nukes all the more in their own self-defense. And as you said, that we're bringing about the risk of terrorism against the US, which we've already seen an example of, where there was a shooting in Austin where a man who was wearing a shirt that says something about Allah went and shot and killed two people. And as you said, our FBI director was playing fucking hockey.
Yeah, I think that there's there's just so much distance between them and the people that it's crazy that we as a whole are speaking out about this. Like the majority of people were opposed to this war to begin with. There were literally negotiations happening on the Thursday right before the strike, which also seems like a slap in the face there. Trump seems very okay with getting rid of any next target. Talks of the economy as well, like Trump was talking about how it's going to get better, which I don't know if that's what we've seen. Prices of gas and oil getting higher. I saw it get lowered again, but now it's higher again. And Trump has to say that this is just a small price to pay for safety and peace.
Yeah, the economic consequences of this are going to be broad, wide-ranging, and ongoing for quite a while because Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, where it's a major shipping for oil in particular, and they've ramped up their aggression in the Strait of Hormuz to prevent shipping of oil out of their country or in the region in general. And we've already seen in Asia, there's been a lot of blackouts and a lot of consequences because they are very reliant on that shipping lane to get their
Mhm.
energy. So untold people are going to suffer and potentially die from having a lack of energy, which is, you know, predictable outcome of all of this, unfortunately. And the US, even though we're not super reliant on Iranian oil or Middle Eastern oil at this point, it's still just the economic consequences that we're bringing about of this are really unfathomable right now. And to think that, you know, there were some Republicans out there who are championing this war still calling themselves fiscal conservatives is
God.
absurd.
Yeah,
And talk about affordability being their main issue and the biggest thing that is on Americans' mind right now. And now they're going to
spend $1 billion a day of our money on this war that no one wants.
and throw all the markets into complete chaos because Trump changes his mind every other second of the day. And, one moment he's saying, well, we think the war is complete and it'll be over soon. And then the oil prices go back down. And then he says, well, actually, this could take a while, goes back up. And it's just like, the name of the game with Trump has never been stability, but now more than ever, I am genuinely alarmed by the rate by which he's changing his mind and not communicating to the people, why are we doing this? To what end?
Another person I think who has been pretty outspoken about the money we're going to make on this war is Lindsey Graham. This, oh my gosh, the amount that I could talk about how crazy Lindsey Graham is when it comes to war, when it comes to this bloodthirstiness for death, it seems like, and the claims that he has for making so much money from this war. I have a quote from him, "We're gonna blow the hell out of these people," talking about oil and gas, making money off of that, which I don't necessarily think is even true. It seems like he's pushing the, and he's also very proud of the fact that we're in this war. Um, he talked about having claims of being behind Netanyahu's pushing, which Netanyahu has also been pushing, not just Trump, but he had also pushed past US presidents to want to be in this war. But there's a reason why Trump is the only one who seemed to give in to that.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham is absolutely out of line. He's been acting like the Secretary of State, basically, in Trump's ear, telling him all of these things about why this war is necessary. And Megyn Kelly had the best analysis of it that I've seen. She said that he's basically out of his mind, he's without a clue, and also without children, which matters a lot because to him, it's like, well, who's going to go fight this war? Other people's kids, not his. And that's something we need to keep in mind. There has been no draft or ground troops in this war yet, but they haven't taken that option off the table, and that's according to Caroline Levitt, who went on, went in the media and basically said we haven't ruled that out yet. Which, if they do start drafting us, like who's going to be the one fighting it? It's going to be our peers, us, people we
Hmm.
know. It's going to be your kids, your family,
Young people.
and not Lindsey Graham's family because he doesn't have any kids. Maybe I
Yeah,
wonder if he would sacrifice them if he did.
he is, I don't know, everything I see about what he's saying about this, I just can't even believe he's outright admitting it. There seems to be something psychologically wrong with him when it comes to,
They're not hiding the ball at all, to
yeah.
their credit, because oftentimes our government does try to hide the ball and lie to us, but they're telling it exactly to our faces, and we should listen to them.
And I mean, we talk all the time about transparency, but you're right, we should listen to them. Why are we not opening our eyes to them more? Why are we not like kicking them out of these positions? Like Lindsey Graham especially, like it's actually scary about the things that he is talking about. I
He
think
he has explicitly said that we're doing this for Israel. He has said that he's, with them all the way, and that even the isolationists or the non-interventionists in his own district that he is there to represent, he doesn't care about them and what they have to say. He cares about representing the best interests of Israel. And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has also said that Israel would have attacked Iran anyway, and that's basically why we decided to step in when we did, because we were trying to do damage control on how much that Israel could possibly screw that up. And, that again just shows you that this isn't a war that's being fought in America's best interest explicitly. If anything,
it seems like we're being used as a pawn right now in this war for Israel.
the best you can say is we're trying to mitigate the damage that, another country would have done by launching this war, but it feels like we're not the ones in control or steering the ship here, and I definitely don't think that our politicians are steering the ship at all.
And I don't think being the first to strike is also a way of retaliation against if something might have happened. I don't think that throwing around hypotheticals here is the right way to go about it or the right analysis of it, which we are mentioning in terms of that's the people who are in favor of this war who are saying like, yeah, we did this to protect, or whatever. But now it just seems like there's only a bigger reason for them to come back and strike on us.
Totally. I mean, we're opening ourselves up to a lot of negative things that could happen that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gotten into this war, particularly the economic stuff, the sleeper cells, the terrorism threat. All of this is very, very real, which is to say nothing of the actual horrors that have happened in this war so far, and we're only 10 days in what could end up being a month's, maybe year plus long war. But I wanted to get into some of the tragedy that's happened already, where
Hmm.
there was a school in Iran that was located by a military base, but had actually split off from that campus and had become a school for young girls. And it was struck with a Tomahawk missile on, I think, the first day of the war, killing around 175, mostly young girls. And there was a lot of people asking questions about who struck that school.
Why did they strike that
Were
school?
they aware that it was a school, or did they think it was still part of this military base that was right next to it? And it was hit by a Tomahawk missile. So there was reporters asking Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, was that our missile? Trump said immediately, no, it was Iran, and we know because they're very reckless with their munitions. We would never do something like that. They struck their own base, whether accidentally or on purpose, we'll find out. Deflecting the possibility that, denying the possibility that it could have been the US who did that. He said, we sold tomahawks to many nations. Many nations used tomahawks, which is somewhat true, but not really. I don't think we've sold tomahawks to Iran recently, which he was trying to say it was Iran who shot the missile that hit the school. And he was called out for this in the media. Pete Hegseth said that they were going to investigate the cause of who might have hit them, but early evidence is kind of indicating already that it was a U.S. Tomahawk that hit that building. It's just a matter of why. Surely they didn't target it intentionally, but there's an investigation that needs to occur to find the answer to that.
Yeah, and so many people were against these strikes to begin with too, because like Congress didn't even approve it either. I think that was another major poll that came out. People being like, I don't understand why Congress wasn't involved here. I think Trump should be investigated with that as well. I I would like to say that I would like to see that happen, but right now with how things are going, I don't see that in the near future. Um, uh, yeah, I have a CBS poll for 69% of people believe Congress should have been involved first, but we'll see. I'm not seeing them speak out as much either, which I think also is something that needs to happen. I think that all Americans right now should be speaking out, especially the people in power, and especially right now is a great chance for the Democrats to speak up as well. Um, and honestly, the Republicans too. I don't understand where all the Republicans went who were speaking out about this, about being against this war leading up to it, because they all seem to be sparse right now.
I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was against it, but now she's out of Congress because they bullied her and didn't care when her family was threatened over the Epstein files. So, good job, everyone. Just rewinding a little bit, but to your point about how our politicians should be more vocal about all of this. So the school that they struck, killing 175 or so, um, the administration has either denied or said that they're going to investigate whether it was U.S. involvement. But there was Senator Kennedy of Louisiana who essentially owned it and apologized and said that this was a terrible mistake. And, again, there does need to be an investigation. Was it a U.S. missile? But regardless, 175 girls were killed.
Innocent deaths.
And that's just among the many cases that are sure to come out of if this war continues. Because when they say the fog of war, that this is just what happens, or small price to pay for peace, or whatever, which is the most Orwellian bullshit I've ever heard. The war is peace mentality that some of our leaders have, utter bullshit. But yeah, when they say that this is just the fog of war, this is what happens. It's completely unacceptable. There's going to be so many more instances just like that. Another one being that there was a Catholic priest who was killed in Lebanon because he stayed. They're trying to evacuate people from Lebanon because Israel is moving into Lebanon also as a way of, they say, getting targets in by Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. But there was a Catholic priest who was killed in that process because they engaged in essentially what you could call a double tap, where they struck a place, a bunch of people gathered to see what was going on or to help people who might be injured, and they hit it again, the IDF, and killed this priest. So yeah, again, this is just the longer that this goes on, these stories are just going to get worse and worse and more dark and tragic. And as this tends to build and spill over into other countries in the region, we've seen them attacking Dubai. Iran has hit Dubai, Doha. They're moving into Lebanon with Israel moving into Lebanon to get Hezbollah targets. Saudi oil fields and other facilities where they process oil, the Strait of Hormuz. Like this is a massive we're moving, barreling toward a massive regional war in the Middle East.
I almost just want to reiterate, like, we are only 2 weeks into this going on. Like, not even a full 2 weeks, I don't think. Like, there's so much more tragedy that's going to come from this. Like, you even just listening off all those stories of everything that had occurred so far, it, I hate to say it, but it feels just so dystopian in the way that our leaders are willing to put so many lives at stake. I am 100% not one of the people to talk about people's casualties just being like a part of war. I hate that statement. I think that's also what you were touching on as well.
Mhm.
I don't think that we should ever take human life as lightly as sometimes people take when it comes to the big picture, the big idea of war or of peace. Like, there's no way that this is all coming down to peace when it ends up hurting not only human lives, but also, if you want to care about it personally, taxpayer money too. Like, again, $1 billion a day is actually insane. There's also people who want to continue to fund for this military campaign which also isn't very clear. Trump keeps saying that the war is going to end soon or whatever, like how in Venezuela, how he was pretty much in and out of there. But why would we need to give more money to a military campaign if the war is supposedly ending? Like, don't you think that if we're supposedly like giving more money, that that means that it's going to be going on forever or extending even further?
Yeah, I mean, just the number of examples of regime change wars that have dragged on and on. My estimation about what's happening is that Trump feels emboldened that he was able to get in and out of Venezuela so quickly with Maduro, and so he thinks that maybe they can do that again. I would love if they could do that again, and if it could all just end tomorrow and he decides it's over. If he decides we killed the Ayatollah, we wiped out their navy, we destroyed their capacity to, produce ballistic missiles or whatever. If Trump decides tomorrow that this is all over and wraps it up and leaves, takes the off-ramp that is available but is rapidly closing, that would be amazing. But it doesn't seem that that is going to happen as easily here as it did with Venezuela. And even with Venezuela, there's still some questions about their current leadership now that we've arrested their leader, Maduro.
Which also is a huge question for what's going to happen here. Like, if this war continues to go on forever, like, is stopping going to stop when we decide who the next leader is going to be? Like, I don't see the end to it unless all of these deaths happen and it goes on forever and ever, which is something that we're obviously very opposed to.
This is why it feels like, in many ways, I keep saying to what end? It feels like the end is death in a way because it's so vague in its reasons for doing this, for how long this could drag on. It feels like the people who are driving this, like you were saying, Lindsey Graham, there's something kind of psychologically not right. It feels like they're doing this because of a bloodlust where, the point is death. And I just got back from Mexico where I went to some of the Mayan sites like Chichen Itza where they used to do human sacrifice because they believed that they needed to sacrifice to appease the gods in order to keep the world running, as they believed that it should. And I think that we've lost touch with that. There's something about the human psyche that can be manipulated by this almost demonic need to sacrifice and appease some unknown deity. And to me, this feels like some weird modern version of that, where the people who are making these decisions don't actually give a crap about the people who they claim or the causes that they claim to be doing it for. It feels like we are the gum on the bottom of the government's shoe, except for actually it's more like we're the crap on the bottom of their shoe because that's how much contempt they have for us. And also, by the way, we're the ones paying for the shoe. So that's my 2 cents about it. This feels like it's very much being done for the cause of death, not for any of the stated causes, vague as they are. And we're just going to have to wait and watch and hope that our leaders have some kind of um, some kind of strength is to say, okay, now it's over, because that's really what it's going to require. It's going to require a lot of strength and going against a lot of people with a lot of bloodlust who seem to really enjoy this happening.
That seems like the worst part for regular people just watching the news unfold right now is it feels very uncontrollable and it feels like you said, like it affects us so much and we can't do anything about it but wait and pray and hope when I don't want to put so much faith in these people when they're the ones and the reasons why we're even in this situation in the first place, when we have been saying that we do not want this to happen.
I think we need to appeal to their own self-interest and their own narcissism and say, if you keep this up, you're going to not only lose the midterms, but you're going to lose Gen Z for a generation. The Republicans who are driving this, where the hell is
The
Vance?
boomers who are wanting this.
Where the hell is Vance and Tulsi Gabbard, who campaigned for years against foreign intervention? The vice president and the director of national intelligence, how is their perspective not being taken into account? Are they not being vocal in Trump's ear saying, don't listen to Lindsey Graham, he's clearly deranged? Where are they? If they think that they stand a chance in hell of winning the midterm elections this year and Vance may be running in 28, whatever, they better
Needs to
end
step
this
up.
war immediately.
I am also pretty disappointed in that the Senate rejected the Democrats' 1973 power resolution because that would also have forced Trump to end the strikes. I don't understand where those people went. I don't understand why not more people who have the power to do so are stopping it when they can or could have.
Definitely. Well, part of the reason why they might not be stopping it, like I said, in addition to the bloodlust,
Hmm.
is also the war profiteering that goes on with the military-industrial complex and how so many of our politicians are bought off by lobbyists or invested in these companies that stand to gain a lot of profit from us intervening militarily. Also, now you have the added dimension of the whole betting market thing with the like Polymarket and other companies where people are placing bets on global events such as other people's death in this war and placing bets about when are we going to strike? Are we going to strike? Are they going to kill the Ayatollah? Will he still be here in so many weeks or months? It's all just so sick. And I just wanted to point that out.
I unfortunately also think that this whole betting market and even people investing in the war in a way of like treating deaths like the number in a game or anything like that also fuels Trump's narcissism and all those people who are in favor of the war and who benefit from it are also having an excuse to be like, okay, well, these people are okay with it. Okay, well, we are able to have this happen because they're betting on it. Like it's a game to all of us, which I don't think is true at all. I think that it's a very dystopian, disgusting thing to do.
It's exactly like in the Hunger Games where they bet on
Exactly.
which tributes are going to survive in the arena and which aren't. And also same as the gladiators with Rome. There's this bloodlust that is inherent, I think, in the human psyche that we are disconnected from. It is coming out in these very perverse ways. Also, Donald Trump Jr. is on the Poly Market Advisory Board, so that's wonderful. And there's a huge question about the insider trading that can happen with these new and emerging markets where essentially like people in Washington, D.C., presumably who might know a thing or two about the global events that are about to happen could easily stand to gain a lot of money on these markets.
I want to talk about how it's crazy how close we are to everything that's happening as two people living in DC right now. Like you said, like people trading inside information or anything like that. I totally think that a lot of back channeling and whisperings happen on the Hill and everything around the war and around other things. So I think it's completely selfish and narcissistic that people are even considering making money off of this or who are doing so.
I knew with 99% certainty that this war was going to happen by the end of spring. It happened a little bit faster than I thought it was going to be. And I tried to warn everyone on this show several times, just saying, watch out, this is probably going to happen. But yeah, just to think that like somehow people could use that knowledge to profit and it's like you said, it's completely dystopian and unjust.
The Hunger Games was a perfect analogy for it. I actually had that written down as well. Um, I don't know if we had mentioned Polymarket on this show before, but it is an app where people can bet on different outcomes from like when Taylor and Travis are getting engaged to now the deaths of people in this war.
Yeah. So it's a very screwed up situation. I actually think that's all that I have on Iran for the moment, though. Surely there'll be more. Probably there'll be more by the time we wake up tomorrow morning. But again, today is March 10th, and as of right now, that's all that I really have to say.
Me as well. I think that, well, no, I think we will be keeping up on this war over and over again every single day, basically, because there's so many changes. When I wake up in the morning and check it, I think something to say about news fatigue right now too is that so many of us are feeling it. Like, I don't even have advice for people right now because it's like I said earlier, it's really hard to be a part of something that's so uncontrollable when it is something that affects us all.
Hopefully, listening to other people who share the opinion that our leaders are out of control and that the US doesn't stand to benefit from this hardly at all, that they're completely disregarding our legitimate concerns about the economy and the lives of American people, people abroad. And regardless of the fact that we dislike strongly the Iranian regime, that this was just a short-sighted way of dealing with that issue, um, one that, kind of bypassed all of the constitutional limitations and constraints and our precedent against just executing kind of unilateral regime change wars. Um,
Which we're against this regime. I feel like I can't even say that enough. I don't want anyone to get that construed at all.
Another real concern is anytime we engage in a regime change abroad, they tend to use that as a justification to impose all kinds of constraints on us domestically, not only because we're going to be economically stretched further than we have been, but because they can use the security and the national security as a means for justifying all kinds of things. We saw that with the war on terror, where then they introduced the Patriot Act, and before you know it, like the NSA is surveilling everyone's communications. And it's like, just be, for those, I want to say, appealing to the Republicans out there who might be a fan of this war and because they believe in Trump and they think that he's going to do the right thing and get us out of this quickly. Just be very, very mindful that there are people out there who would love to turn the US into a security state, one that they can continually control and profit off of also while you continue to struggle. And um, I just don't have that faith in our government. I don't care, Republican, Democrat. I've seen enough from these people to know that I firmly don't believe that they have our best interests at heart here. And just keep watching to see what happens. I think that will pan out.
I agree with that. I also think that people should be on the lookout for any war propaganda or anything that might be from the government that is saying things that isn't actually happening. I think even with us, we were talking about reviewing this news and going over facts, and it's really hard to stifle through it sometimes when it comes at you every single day, every single second, basically at this point. So I think it's important to look out for that and be able to practice discerning between what is something the government wants you to believe and something that the government wants you to be in support of versus the actual facts that are happening and then forming your own opinion on that, not because of the influence of narcissistic people in charge.
Right. And I'm very aware that this is probably the angriest that I've ever come across in any episode that we've done. And the reason that I'm so adamant right now is not to sound alarmist or scare people or even just to beat up against the administration, which I have a lot of feelings about right now, but it's because I think that people underestimate how much they are able to affect change. And this will pivot us into our next topic because speaking about ICE
And propaganda.
and immigration enforcement and the way that they were conducting themselves, the vast majority of people were not a fan of ICE's tactics, especially in Minneapolis. And we saw tens of thousands of protesters out there in January after Renee Good was shot and killed, and then Alex Preddy was also shot and killed by immigration enforcement. And guess what happened? They took Kristi Noem out of Minneapolis. They took Greg Bovino out of Minneapolis. They put Tom Homan in, and then he withdrew ICE out of Minneapolis. And that only happened because the people all got together, expressed how angry they were about this. We don't condone all of the activities that they did to do that. However, by and large, the administration had to respond to that. They couldn't not. It was so overwhelming. Tens of thousands of citizens saying, we don't want
Being
this.
united together and speaking as one voice is so much more powerful than I think people realize sometimes. And I also think that with everything that's going on, people are so quick or so easily defeated. And I think that doing something like this, like us talking about this and also talking about it with your peers and protesting, assembling peacefully, I think is such a way to get people to notice what's happening and what the Americans disagree with, especially as young people who many older people don't believe that we even speak out or even care about these things. But honestly, it affects us the most.
Yeah. So again, with the propaganda that might emerge out of this war, and it's easier to get behind a politician or a party and to just kind of ride it out and go with what they say because that requires no discernment on your part, and you can kind of bypass some of the guilt and the heavy emotions about what's actually happening in the
Mhm.
world. And we're telling you, don't bypass how terrible what's happening really is or the tough feelings about it. Actually listen to that. I think anyone who's looking at this rationally could see why it feels like we're being manipulated and exploited here. And don't turn away from that kind of inherent gut feeling that you have that something is not right about the way that this is being conducted and the reasons why we're going about this. And listen to that. Cause some kind of a upswelling of um, sentiment against this war. And I do think if everyone does that, they have no option but to listen and to draw back, like they did in Minneapolis.
Exactly. And also, I think to separate this from party lines, I think it's another thing to, like you said, I really liked how you said getting behind a certain politician or leader or group is really easy because you could blindly follow. But I think it's really important to highlight this as a not partisan issue as well, which even the polls say when it came to people disagreeing with this war, not wanting it to happen.
Right.
Okay.
So, but we're the ones paying for this in money and lives. Just remember that. I think next we want to talk about Christy Nome.
Okay, everyone on our show who watches us ha and listens to us know exactly how we feel about Christy Noem. It was really funny when we first heard that Christy Noem was fired by the Trump admin. 2 days after being grilled by Congress, she's the first cabinet member in Trump's second term to leave.
And I have extensive notes here where I wrote down some pretty mean stuff about Kristi Noem, but I actually am not really feeling that way right now after I got all that anger out about the war in Iran. So I'll just play nice right now and say that she won't be missed and she did it to herself.
Yeah. Um, First was Trisha McLaughlin, and now is Christy Noem. Yeah, she was fired not for the reasons I initially thought she would be fired. You'd think maybe she'd be fired for everything that the DHS stands for now and for killing two American citizens, rounding up people in the most witch hunt of ways, rather than anything that's legal or moral.
Or Christian, which they
Which she,
profess to be
yeah,
important to them, but doesn't seem to bear out all the time. Yeah, no, exactly. I think that she destroyed DHS's image, whatever image that they had. They're
exactly.
now largely seen as America's Gestapo, which was completely an unforced error. That was all the administration and Kristi Noem's doing. They could have done what they campaigned on and specifically gone after violent offenders who were also here legally, which most Americans can agree is probably people we need to jail slash deport because they're violent offenders. But instead, that was a very small number, a percentage of the people they actually pursued for deportation. And they were kind of indiscriminately rounding people up, like you said, in very kind of inhumane ways, wearing masks, tackling people in the street,
Yeah,
shooting and killing two
if you're an
Americans.
ICE agent and you're wearing masks, like you have to know there's a reason why you're wearing that. You're obviously embarrassed to be a part of it. What are you doing? There's so many ads that were run about joining this, especially around DC. I mean, like even the Super Bowl, there's like locally targeted ads, and I remember texting people in like California and Vegas about like the different commercials, and I only, as of my knowledge, knew that like ICE ads ran only for us here in DC. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on with her, and I'm glad to see her out of office.
It was exactly like you said, though, where she's not being fired for the reasons that you would think. Actually, why she probably got fired, at least according to what I've heard, is that she was testifying in a congressional hearing, and they were
Hmm.
asking her about an ad campaign that they had spent 220 million on allegedly, and Noam was answering for this 60-second ad that she was prominently in. And she was saying, "Oh yeah, like we had to get that approved and like Trump was
And
aware of
Trump,
it and that Trump, knew that they were going to spend this crazy ass amount of money on this ad campaign with using apparently some like ad or branding or advertising company that had just been founded like 11 days earlier." So again, suspicious as hell. But she said that Trump was aware of this and signed off on it. Trump was apparently at least saying like he wasn't or that he wasn't aware of this and didn't know that they were spending this much amount of money. So privately, I heard that he was very enraged by this claim of Noam's and that it made him look bad. And I think that in addition to all of the other strategic failures of DHS under Noam, it was just too much. And
yeah, I can't believe that was the tip of the iceberg.
that was the straw that broke the camel's
Yeah,
back.
apparently. And you know how Trump feels about looking stupid. So that's what we need to do. Just keep making him look stupid with all of his cabinet members, and we'll take them out one by one.
Literally. So like it wasn't the lack of training that the ICE agents have been allegedly
Or the
getting.
amount of money that we spent, or the deaths, or anything like that. It was Christy Nome on a horse.
As I was in the airport the other day, it occurred to me like somewhere Marco Rubio is re-recording those TSA ads that Kristi Noem has been in since she took over DHS. And I just wanted to say that I take great pleasure in the fact that Washed Up has existed before Kristi Noem was DHS
And now
secretary and now
after.
after. We lasted longer than her and we're going to keep it going.
Yeah. Um,
There's a couple other cabinet members who might, you know, we might last longer than as well.
Hopefully. Yeah, Christy Nome was replaced by Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma. Um, done little bit of research about him. Trump called him a MAGA warrior on social media, and he has yet to be confirmed. He's an ex-MMA fighter, which I don't really like that much. I don't know. I don't have high hopes, mostly because I don't have high hopes in the Trump administration in general. So I guess we'll see what goes on with him.
Right. I heard that he has to be confirmed by the end of this month, otherwise they'll appoint like an interim director of DHS. But DHS is a huge operation. They oversee not only immigration enforcement, but also like FEMA and TSA and all of these other sort of apparatuses. And so it's a huge, huge role to have. And I just have never, ever, we go back, rewind the tape, play our show from a year ago. We had the highest amount of skepticism for Kristi Noem being appointed to this role. It made no sense at the time. She was
It
completely,
never made
she
sense.
did not have the temperament for this at all. She was purely driven by her own vanity. The ad campaign shows that. So that's why I say she did it to herself because it was her own vanity that was her downfall. And there's just so many examples that come to mind from her going down to the prison center in El Salvador and looking like all made up and like, I don't know, she's like trying to be a beauty queen down in this prison, acting all tough. I've seen pictures of her like holding a gun, but she's accidentally pointing it at someone's head right next to her instead of down because she doesn't know what the hell she was doing. And that just exemplifies her entire tenure at DHS and also
She
kind of
will
the
go down
administration in general.
for not, yeah, she will go down for the worst image possible. So many people are hating on her on both sides because something about Trump is once he finds an enemy out of you, all of his MAGA people follow. So I've been seeing like a lot of loyal Trump supporters also being like, why would Kristi Noem blame Trump for this, blah, 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 blah. So she has zero fans right now.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned to me that she's probably the most hated person in America right now, and I could certainly see that. There's a lot of contenders for that role at the moment, but
There's a long line for that one, actually.
which is we're not even going to get into the allegations with her and Corey Lewandowski. I don't even
Yeah,
want to
I
deal with
don't want to
that.
touch that.
It doesn't matter. She's gone. C'est la vie.
Yeah.
She will not be missed, and we should not allow her back into polite political circles or any role, leadership position ever again. She's done. Goodbye.
Yeah. Washed up, as they say.
Join the club.
Okay. I think that's it.
Yep.
Okay. Washed
Just
up
about.
out.